Hi, welcome to Mirror Image Crafts. This is Elisa. Today we're going to make this card using the Loads of Love and Loads of Love accessory stamp set. Now I made this card several years ago and I wanted to duplicate it because this River Rock ribbon right here we no longer sell in Stampin' Up. This was from a few years back when River Rock was in color and we had this ribbon. So I wanted to recreate it, and I also wanted to add a little more color to it. So let's get started. I'm using excuse me, River Rock cardstock. This is our card base. It's 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4 for our card base. I'm also using a Night of Navy piece, or I'm sorry, not quite navy. Excuse me, this piece measures 4 by 3.5. I'm using Cherry Cobbler. This came from my scraps box, so this happens to be textured cardstock, which is really nice. This Cherry Cobbler piece is 3 1/8 by 2 5/8, and this Whisper White piece that we're going to stamp on is 3 by 2 1/2. So the first thing I want to do is stamp our little greeting down here at the bottom of this River Rock piece. And to do that, because I'm using StazOn for my truck image in a minute, I'm just going to use StazOn for the whole project. So I'm just going to ink that up and stamp that right down at the bottom. Okay, that's not too bad. I'll clean that in a minute. Go ahead and leave my StazOn out, because the next thing I want to do, I'm going to set this aside. We're going to stamp our truck image, also with StazOn. Okay. I want this just centered in the middle of my white piece. Let's see how I do. Oh, not bad. Okay. So I'm going to set that aside. Next, I'm going to stamp this little lady image and the dogs. And to do that, those are both from the accessories, Loads of Love accessories. To do that, I'm going to use my Stampin' because I want them placed exactly where I want them. So I'm going to take the lady and stamp her right there. And then all you do is you take your imaging sheet and lay it over where you want your image to be. Take your positioner, line it up, move that out of the way, and stamp her down. Perfect. Okay. And now we do the same for the dogs that go in the back of the truck. So I'm going to get my initial image on my imaging sheet. Okay. Bring my white piece back in. Position the puppy dogs. And stamp them. Okay, great. Then I can put this Stampin' away, and I'll clean that later. Okay, now what I want to do here is get kind of a watercolor look, and I've only recently purchased the aqua painters that you put water in, so I'm much more comfortable using blender pens, so that's what we're going to use today. And this is what your blender pen looks like. This is what your blender pen looks like once you've used it a whole bunch. Now none of that color that you see on the end of my blender pen is going to get on my project. If you see, it's completely dry, completely clean. It just gets stained a little bit. So first thing I want to color is my truck, and I don't have a River Rock ink pad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my marker, the brush tip side, I'm just going to pull off some of the color. You'll see I want it to be really light. I'm just going to pull some of the color off the marker. And then I'm going to color the truck with River Rock. And I am not going to make you watch me do this whole thing. Okay, now you'll see that I have my truck image colored with my River Rock marker. It's just a very light coloring using the marker and my blender pen. I forgot to mention the reason I'm using StazOn. If you haven't used a blender pen or aqua painters before, you really need to stamp your main image using StazOn for best results, because your blender pen will actually pull the regular black classic ink out of your image and kind of bring that into your coloring. So StazOn won't do that, so that's why I use that. The next thing I want to color, I think I'm going to color the tires. And what I'm doing is I'm squeezing some ink into the lid of my ink pad. That gives me a color pool here to draw from for my blender pen. So I'm going to just pull that in, test it a little bit. Just want a real light color there. As you use your blender pen and pull the color around, you'll see it gets lighter and lighter. Okay, now I've finished up my tires, and I've also added a little bit of the basic gray color to the fenders, I guess is what that's called. Now I'm just going to take my gray and kind of make it look like a road right there. Watercoloring and coloring stamped images is not my forte, but I do enjoy doing it from time to time, so I need to practice a little bit more, get a little bit better at it. Okay, so now I'm going to clean off my blender pen. I'm ready to color her hair. I'm just going to take my River Rock again and just make it a little darker than the rest of my image. There you go. And now, let's see, I want her shirt to be cherry cobbler. So I'm going to do that color next. Just bringing in a little bit of color right there. Okay, just very little. And then the dogs, I think, also should be River Rock. I'm trying to keep this simple and keep the color palette just to a few colors. And with the blender pen, you can also make the dogs look like they're slightly different colors just by going over some of them a little bit more. So there's that. Okay, and that is it for our image. So I'm going to put my blender pen away. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to distress the edges of this white piece. And to do that, I'm going to use the Stampin' Up! Cutter Kit. It's got this great distressing tool. And I just kind of rub it right here on the edges of my cardstock. Just gives it a little texture and interest. You can also do this with your fingernails, but I don't like messing up my fingernails that much. There we go. Okay. Get rid of all that dust. Okay. Next, I'm ready to mount my stamped image on my cherry cobbler piece. But if you'll see in my original card, I kind of folded over this edge right there, so I'm going to do that again. I like how that looks. There's no precise way to do that. I'm just going to kind of crinkle it. That's to the distressed look of it. And then I'm going to take my SNAIL adhesive and apply that on the back. Okay. Line that up right there. Okay. And then I'm going to attach this piece to my Not Quite Navy. Looks like I'm almost out of that SNAIL adhesive. I'm going to put this up at the top, because what I want to do now, since we don't have this River Rock ribbon anymore, I wanted to use cherry cobbler to go right there. And I think instead of doing this little, I don't know, ribbon end thing that I adhered with scissors, I think I'm going to try to actually tie a knot, because I don't do bows, but I'm going to try a knot, I think. So I'm using the cherry cobbler seam binding, and let's see, I'm going to do about 10 or 12 inches of that. And bear with me, I don't usually film myself tying these, so I don't know how good it's going to be. Let's tie it right there. Seam binding is pretty forgiving when you're tying it, so thankfully. Hey, there we go. Now I'm going to move it off to this side a little bit and trim the edges. Okay. Okay. Now I'm ready to put this whole piece on my card base, and then we are finished. So, turn that over. My SNAIL adhesive. Okay. And just position it right where I want it on the front of the card. There we go. And then we are done. Just a slightly different look. Very similar card. Maybe a little more feminine. I'm not sure. But anyway, I just wanted to try copying a card I'd already done and just make a few small changes to it. So I hope you liked that and got some good ideas. So let me know if you have any questions, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.